Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time to Nerd Fight!
Step into the ring, it's time to brawl. Nerd fights, baby, we're geeking for all. Marvel, DC, Trek, and more. Pop culture battles, settle the score. Nerd fights, let's get loud. Nerd fights, yeah, for the geeky crowd. Nerd fights, hey, it's time to throw down. Bring your fandom, it's the hottest showdown. Who's got the takes? Who's got the heat? Mr. Know-It-All and Salty can't be beat.
That means only one thing. It's time to fight.
He drops out with a final shot.
Nerd Fights.
Let's fight!
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Nerd Fights.
Is it just me or did I have like no hair in that intro?
No, you didn't. You totally didn't know. You had, because when you took the picture, you didn't have the ponytail visible, so which is fine. I guess it's better than having the full Klingon. Anyways, welcome to Nerd Fights. I'm, of course, your host, Mr. Know-It-All. Joining me is the captain of the ship, Salty Trekker, Michael Crawford. How are you, sir?
I am, I've been doing nothing but watching Section 31 for the last couple of days.
I know you're literally Stockholm syndroming yourself.
Yeah, this is getting bad. And I'm working on the.
What's up, Robert? How's it going?
I'm working on the third part of the review proper, and I'm only in the bar scene where they just took the drugs and
did the things, all the stuff. I love it. I love it. So normally the way the show works, you guys, is we like to talk about different topics, things going on in the world of entertainment. Right now, there's only one thing on our minds because remember, above all others, Star Trek is our fandom, and we have to actually talk about Section 31. Both of us have our various reviews. I've got my review I've done. He's working currently very diligently on his series of very just getting in the fine details. His reviews are amazing, so be checking those out on the Salty channel. And then but today we're going to talk about Section 31 here. A little bit of not really a review, I think, but as much as just kind of talking about it. And then toward the end, we're gonna have a really fun exercise, which is that we're going to take the opportunity to actually rewrite the thing. Because unlike him, I do believe I saw the potential vision, and I see a vision. I'm not saying it's their vision that Kirkman and all them got going on, but I see a vision. What's going on, Aravic? Hey guys, in the comment section. So happy to see you guys again.
Well, and I'll tell you. So I would say this. I will not only. I'm willing to wager that I have a viable solution for the mess that is Section 31.
Okay.
I even have two of them. One if it's a movie, and another if it's a series.
Okay. Well, because that's basically what they've put together. Essentially, yes. This is a glorified pilot. So we'll see what's up.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Robert says Salty Trekker watching all this new Trek. He must like torturing himself.
That's and Planet X unfortunately putting a super chat in the wrong channel.
I thank you myself, good sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I love Planet X and I go back. We're like this. We go back. Sun's out, guns out. Let's go. Hi, Stan.
It's winter.
No, for real. All right, so let's get into this, man. So Section 31. So I remember I called you up. I woke up late. I started watching it. I called you up like 30 minutes in, and I was like, I don't know what I'm watching. This is, but I see the vision. And you were like, what vision? And you got mad at me.
Well, I did because I don't see a vision. I see a lack thereof.
Agreed. By that I mean I think there's a version of this that could have had either that maybe saw Georgiou go on an arc, but then they proceed for 90 minutes to pound into the ground and pound us in the head across the head with it. That how a horrible human being she is. So I don't know. It's like I don't know what was the point. What was the intent of the point?
The point of it was they had Michelle Yeoh under contract, and she's
her old man is an exec at CBS or whatever. Like at the network or something. What is?
Well, but the thing is that like if they got her into the contract because at the time it would have
Yeah.
been a good career boost for her to be the lead in her own series. That would have been a step up because she had kind of, her big movie days were kind of over, and she was the guest star on Discovery. But now, hey, you can have your own show, and so that would have been a move up for her. Then she wins an Academy Award, and all of a sudden she's too cool for school, and so now they're desperately
Yeah,
trying.
and they literally that night. Do you remember
Yeah,
the night she won the Oscar? The show wasn't over, and Paramount put out the announcement. Oh, we have Section 31. Blah blah blah. It was
yeah.
so big, and you're like, oh, you
Yeah,
got
when it was in development hell for years before that. And I think the reason it was in development hell for so long is painfully obvious when you look at the mess that we got, because there's no story there. There's nothing. Section 30 trying to tell a Star Trek story
yeah.
that revolves around Section 31 would be like trying to tell a Star Wars movie that takes place in Montana.
Hey, what's going on, Jason? Hello, guys. It's good to see all of you. The Trek reviewer says there's not enough Flex Seal, Gorilla Glue, duct tape on Earth to fix this.
Well, this is where the and I really, I think that there is, like, here's my thing is that, like, even when we get into like our ideas for how we would fix it,
Sure.
do I think it would be the greatest? Would it be the next Star Trek 2? Absolutely not. But
Of course not. No, I get it.
because philosophically, I am opposed to the very concept of a Section 31 film. That being said, if you're going, like, if Alex Kurtzman walked into the room in here right now and said, here's $100 million, make a Section 31 movie, I'll make the best darn Section 31 movie I can make.
No, totally. When
Yeah.
the Trustin says, when the main character eats an eyeball, I'm done.
Yes.
Oh, wait, Trustin. Salty has a whole thing about that. We're going to go down. Trust me. Daniel Stenson says, can't wait to watch this garbage. I mean, the movie.
I will tell you, this is, so as we talked about just before we went live,
Yeah.
Georgiou and I feel bad because it's not meant as disrespect to the actors, but the characters are so not memorable that I can barely remember who any of them are.
Ben One Eye, I missed you, sir. He says, aren't we also philosophically opposed to the concept of a Section 31, like itself?
Well, the thing is that there are people in the Star Trek fan base that were genuinely excited when they said we're going to do Section 31.
Trek reviewer threshold was better than Section 31.
Yeah, I
agree.
said it. I actually said it. Yeah, Section 31 is the worst production to bear the name Star Trek. Period.
The thing, I don't even know why it bears the name Star Trek. I mean, so I had this argument with someone the other day where they asked, their whole argument with me was, well, I don't know why the people in the sucky fan base can't, all like this or like that or whatever. Why does everyone why can't we like new things or something? And I'm like, whoa, time out. There exists currently a show that introduced new elements while still being within its IP and all the trappings of it. And that was Skeleton Crew. Good, bad, and different. I'm not even here to talk about that. But Skeleton Crew introduced us to new lore, introduced us to new characters, yet still managed to feel at home in its Star Wars skin.
Well,
This thing didn't do any of that.
Do you know who Eckert's Ladder is?
Yes.
I think it's Eckert's Ladder, if I remember correctly. And this was
I
one
just
of those
started following them.
Yeah. You ever have one of those moments where somebody says something and it's like mind just blown, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I think it might not have been. No, it wasn't Eckert's Ladder. It was somebody else. But anyway, they were. It was their little take on Section 31. They were talking about how bad it was and everything, and they said, you know what? I really, really hate the Acolyte, but if you put the Acolyte on, it looks like Star Wars.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are lightsabers, there are Jedi, there are Star Wars looking spaceships. You even get shots of Coruscant and stuff.
Captain
and
Joe is
so
asking, why is Garrett in the 23rd century? We're going to get into that. Trust me. Don't go far. Salty's going to talk about that too.
uh,
Continue, because that I've waited for us to deal with that alone.
the
I
date.
because I didn't, because you didn't want me to get into all that, so I purposely left that alone in my review because I wanted you to, because you have such a great talk about it. But continue where you're going. We're going to get to the
Right.
Garrett of it all
So
later.
at least, even though the Acolyte was absolutely, the big problem with the Acolyte, of course, crappy writing, right? And usually when something really struggles, it's because crappy writing is usually at the core of it. But at least the producers knew what Star Wars was.
Agreed.
And even though they completely missed the mark by trying, but by trying to do something that just didn't work in the Star Wars universe.
Planet X says whoever made this newer watcher inter arma inum silent legus or completely misunderstood the point.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
It's yeah. But you can at least see the like the Acolyte is like a troglodyte. Is like it's like it's
Sure.
got the basic DNA of a human, but it's not quite human, right? And so that's kind of where I see the Acolyte. But this is like, you're trying to tell me that a salamander is a human threshold. So it,
Uh,
it's that
yeah.
far removed. It just
Yeah.
makes no sense. Um,
Stanley, maybe I need to just marinate in my emotions. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's beautiful, wonderful dialogue just like that. He says, "Godsend." Did somebody think that was actually funny?
oh, that
Uh,
whole godsend thing. Did you say godsend or God's end? And it's
well,
like,
and that is inherently very much that actor. He does that kind of like, and my whole thing again, my whole problem with that character in general is that it's a chameleon person or kamaloid that never once does its thing but like twice. And one of them happens off screen and one of them happens, and that's the extent of the effect. And I'm
yeah.
like, this
No,
this
there is another
why
use.
introduce this character?
And in fact, they actually use his abilities in a way we hadn't seen before when he jumps off of the fast moving lift and turns into kind of a spider web to catch somebody, but it's way in the background, so you can barely see it.
Yeah, which again is one of those things where it's at least those would be interesting uses of the powers
Right.
of that ability, sort of that species' ability. Trust me.
Right. The fact that they change the way the Commonoids look when they change, I don't care.
Yeah,
Because
me
hey,
neither. That's
when
fine.
Iman
Whatever.
was playing the first Commonoid we saw, morphing technology was considered edgy.
Very no, for real. That's a great point.
And
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
and so they used the technology that was available to them at the time. Um, and so that's, yeah, that like some of that stuff didn't bother me, but
Stanley asked, did they actually include the mole clues in the show?
the mole clue.
Could
Oh,
you,
like,
as in the, could you go back and figure out who the mole was? They just insert all the mole clues. Yeah, there were no mole clues. Who the
well, the
mole
mole
was?
clues
There was no
is
mole clues.
everybody is untrustworthy.
Correct. Okay, so let's start at the beginning of this thing. So, and again, this is not a step by step. This is just kind of so my initial issue, what really it happened. My initial issue happened the moment that the stardate disappeared, because I'm not even getting into that, and just the line far away from Federation space, and they're pushing in on something that looks like it should have been in the final season of Discovery in the 31st century. It's this really goofy looking space station-y windy thing, and there's like this interconnected like line of spaceships that looks like something that we saw in Discovery at the far future.
Right.
I could not place this show in time for you. This show could have happened during Discovery. It could have happened in Picard. There's nothing about it that says, and the star date. And then you're the one who told me the star date is like what, like a month
It's
or two or something in front.
it's not even that. It's 20. If you, and this is, I've gotten into some arguments with other nerds, but it is exactly 20 days before Where No Man Has Gone Before.
Wow.
And so and
Dang,
people
47 Yorktown. Whew, fighting words. Star Trek V: The Final Frontier wasn't this bad.
yeah,
I'm telling you, if any movie has unified all Star Trek fans on what movie is the worst right now, it's this one.
Well, I will say Section 31 has performed. I think that Section 31 is proof that there is a God. because now we have the most crazy progressive Star Trek fans and the most crazy conservative
Yeah.
Star Trek fans all agreeing.
Like, thank you, Section 31 and Kurtzman. You've brought us all together.
Yes.
Jeez.
And yes, ABJ, Where No Man Has Gone Before is TOS. That is, in fact, the pilot of TOS.
Yeah.
And so, well, the second pilot. So it is, the first pilot didn't have the concept of Stardate down yet. But but yeah, so if you look at
He's
the,
right. Stan's right, though. Stan keeps talking about the fact that whole mystery about who the mole was such a weird, like, they needed something to be happening because there's no clues about the mystery of it.
no,
Nothing
it's just,
says
well,
to
maybe
you.
you're the mole. Well, maybe you're the mole.
That's
and then
it.
one of them was the mole, you know?
And it kind of, no offense, the second they talked about a mole, I was like, oh, well, it's got to be weird little nanite guy, which, by the way, is the craziest species ever. I'm like, what? It's got to be him. Like, I literally thought to myself, it's got to be him. And then it turned out to be him. And I'm like, okay.
You know, wouldn't the nanite guys be helpful against the Borg?
The nanite guys would be helpful against anything. That's the problem. The show wants this. They don't know how to live within something that is like, they don't know how to exist. Star Trek's always
Right.
been a look at the future, what could have been. Us having overcome all the problems are looking and dealing with today's issues through the lens of other species dealing with those things. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how you deal. That's how Star Trek's always been. And we can say stuff like, "Oh, it's because we overcame this thing through this and this." Strange New Worlds did it great in that first season one episode where he had to explain when they did their first contact, and he's having to explain to this scared species everything they've been through. That's
Right.
how you do it.
Strange New Worlds is so Lower Decks is just
Damn.
kind of a deconstruction.
Damn. Yuxter Thorsian says even adult film companies could write a better Star Trek
Yeah.
adult movie parody better than Paramount and Secret Hideout.
But but here's the thing. I'll say this, Yuxter. It's not Paramount and Secret Hideout. It's the specific writers they employed. You know, because Paramount or Secret Hideout could bring in good writers, but they're not. They're bringing in writers that have an agenda to keep the Discovery legacy going. Because if you look at the people who actually wrote the story,
Yeah.
Discovery writers.
Agreed. Alice Aggressively Relaxing says, I was surprised they were so specific with the time. Glad that Garrett got an adventure. Oh, we're going to get into that. This production dealt with the pandemic and strike issues, but glad we got it. We got that Red Mirror ship in the STO. Okay. I also give them credit for having been getting through the strike and everything else. The production having got through what it got through. The problem is it's not good. And when people ask me, well, why isn't it, Gus, just your opinion? You're allowed to this and that. Okay, time out. It's not written well. The same problems I had with The Acolyte, I have with this. They set up nothing. They spoon feed you everything. And I checked out when it comes to expecting anything right when they did the Suicide Squad like intro to each character and what they are. And it all felt like super contrived. And I'm like, what are we doing? Why are we living in this moment right now?
By the way, they not only do the Suicide Squad spoon feed you what every character is, they do it twice, back to back.
Just like Suicide Squad did.
I know, but I mean, like, because Georgiou sits there and goes down the roster and identifies what everybody is, and then they immediately go to the Section 31 ship where he goes down the roster and tells Georgiou who everybody is. But she just told him who everybody is.
Phoenix Gundam says Section 31. I can fix her.
Yeah. I think it can be fixed, but it's not going to look anything like what this incarnation of Section 31 is.
No.
So, yeah, but okay, so like you were saying, it's objectively poorly written, and that's where we get into the dating system, because we have two very firm dates given in the actual story.
Go ahead.
So they do tell us in the voiceover by Jamie Lee Curtis that Georgiou crossed over in 2257, which is accurate. That would be when Discovery was taking place.
Right.
Discovery season 1.
Right.
And so that's when Georgiou first comes over. Now, then she just says, then we lost contact with her, and then she came back, but they didn't give a specific amount of time. Now, some people are saying, well, it was 65 years later that she came back, and we'll get to that in just a second. So then they give a star date, right? And the star date is 20 days before Captain Kirk takes the Enterprise to the edge of the galaxy and Gary Mitchell gets super godlike powers. And so we know now exactly when it's taking place, except we don't, because if that were actually the date, then that means that Rachel Garrett at the time of yesterday's Enterprise is 111 years old. However,
Ta-da!
if you correct it and you say that, well, they're saying that, well, actually, the star date that they use is based on the TNG star date system, which, by the way, is complete BS because there's no such thing as a 4-digit star date in TNG. Does not exist. So it is not using the TNG star date system. But, they probably some fan came up with something, stuck it up on Memory Alpha, and they're saying, see, it's canon.
That's hilarious. Real quick,
but
Phoenix Gundam says the whole movie just needs to be gutted and have lost movie era elements added. By the way, we said that. He and I said that. If you had made this whole thing within the Lost era, because remember, Georgiou didn't necessarily have to come back when she comes back.
And that's what they're saying, is that she came back like 65 years later when she went back through Carl, right? And so... Which would make that's fine. That would fix the problem with Rachel Garrett. The only problem is that means that Sun is 111 years old in the climax of this movie.
Maybe Rachel Garrett was frozen in carbonite. That's how she was alive during the Commander Enterprise C.
That would make more sense to me than
I guarantee you, those unimaginative people over there in the writers' room for this thing, because there's a writers' room.
Right.
Guarantee you, someone said, and in season 3, we can have an episode. We can have Garrett have an accident, something or other, and they've got to put her and dude, who's an augment, because we keep going to that pool, has his cryo tube that he's been keeping, and we're gonna, so that they can help her in the future, we're gonna put her in a thing, and Section 31 will hold on to her until someone can heal her or make her better, thus explaining how she gets to the future. Because it feels like such an egregious mistake to have placed her that I can't in my own brain fathom that they did it on purpose. That much of a screw up, unless it was on purpose, unless there was an intent in a previous iteration of this that they were going to explain why she's even there.
Right. And so you run into the problem that either Garrett or San is 111 years old. There's no way around it. One of them must be that old.
Aggressively relaxes. I'm sorry, you're telling me that the captain of the Enterprise C appears younger than she should be? Looking forward to that movie. That's what right? Like, that's what else are they going to do?
Now, there are some Star Trek ways you could fix it. Like you could say, hey, what if they did the same thing they did to Dr. Pulaski and de-aged her in the transporter or something? However, that the problem is that the prevailing, and according to Captain Foley over at Trek Yards, gotta love Captain Foley. He's got his, a lot of sources. He says that the people that have been making the show are saying that, no, this takes place during the Lost era. Well, that means San is actually 111 years old. However, and the problem there is that why didn't you? And by the way, there is one piece of physical evidence to corroborate this, which we'll get to in a second, which Trek Yards also talked about today in a video, and that is you can barely see it, but if you happen to be able to zoom and enhance. In the background behind Georgiou on the wall, she has a wall of weapons, and the weapons go basically from TOS era all the way through Star Trek VI era, as far as specific Federation weapons. There's a phaser that's a direct replica of the prop from Star Trek VI. And so that means that it must take place after Star Trek VI if that wall is canonical or it didn't get there through time travel shenanigans.
Which could very well be.
Yeah, the thing is, if, let's say, San is 111 years old, And because of the whatever method he used to fake his own death, it either caused him to age slower or he had to go into cryostasis for a couple of decades or whatever, right?
Yes,
That's
Daniel.
all perfectly feasible. However, the second Georgiou saw Sod, she sort of said, "Why are you so young?" Because if you see someone that you know is 100 plus years old, but they look like they're 60, you're going to question that.
Bondage Brittany says, this stream is insane. It would bankrupt this channel trying to fix this. Literally hundreds of dollars to start from scratch and make a new movie with cell phone and Trek costumes.
Yes,
I love you.
it would.
I love you so much. That was awesome.
No, and the thing is that okay. So I do think setting it, first of all, I think the Rachel Garrett thing is stupid. Okay,
Agreed.
I that was just, I mean, it's an attempt at fan service, but it's a character that appears as a
But
one.
what a weird, I know. I'm like, and if you're going to even touch that episode, there's a million and one things you could do that would have been a better choice.
Right.
I don't know. It just doesn't jibe right for me.
However,
47 Yorktown says if the star date was 01292.4, well, that's a 5-digit.
You know what? That's like saying that, the year that Jesus was born was actually 00.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
It wasn't just 0.
Aggressively relaxing says, I'm such a mark for Star Trek. I am too, by the way. You telling me I missed a wall of weapons? I'm going back and looking at that.
Yeah, well, like I said, check out Trek Yards. They did post a video on it where they broke it down. Because what they did was they actually split the wall into little sections so you could it's fuzzy, but you can definitely make out the shapes. And then they talk about what each
Stanley says, and why was she always wearing costumes? Everybody, what did she need the blue hair at the end? I don't understand. Like, what is?
Oh, you're talking about Garrett?
Yeah,
because she's like cyberpunk now, because we don't want her to look Starfleet, I guess.
Welcome, Creep. Creep says every Mirror Universe episode in every Star Trek series sucked. They needed to make a movie that sucked to stay relevant? ?
Well, except that I think Mirror Mirror is a classic.
Oh, I do too, by the way. I do too.
And I think
if for no other reason than because of Spock's goatee.
Yeah.
That's
by the way, In a Mirror Darkly is the best episode of Enterprise to me. I
agree, especially because they were super faithful.
Yeah, and
super faithful.
Now I would agree that all the Mirror Universe stuff with Deep Space Nine and all the Mirror Universe stuff with Discovery was rock bottom for both of those shows.
Yeah,
but the so now.
Youngster says, fix the movie. Can we cast Dark Knight and Lore Reloaded and Doomcock wearing a tutu?
That could be our new Section 31 crew.
Why do I want to make a movie poster of that now? This is it's awesome. Oh my God. I swear, how does this show have lore? And I mean our show, not this show. Like, how does our show have lore like this?
I don't know.
Go on. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. So yeah, I think that they need to pick a time frame and go with it. And if they're whatever time frame they're going to use, they need to have an explanation for it. Because the problem is, and in fact, it's what I was recording when you first logged in.
That was awesome.
Yeah,
I thought you were cursing me out because the way the thing went down.
I said, you may be wondering, how did Georgiou come back in time through Carl, and how did she get a space station? And the answer is the writers don't effing care. They don't.
It's true.
Not
anymore, Ben One Eye. I'm the last one.
Yeah. So it makes there's no. In fact, Georgiou getting a space station would have been a better story.
Again, with these things that give us implications of a better thing. Right. I'm like, what?
You could have made the whole thing. In fact, I'll tell you this: the only thing I've said that's positive so far about in my review is the actress that plays young Philippa Georgiou. I think she killed it.
Right? I thought she did
And
such a good job.
I would have, I say you could have done an entire movie where basically you cut to, you cut to old Philippa Georgiou in her office, just kind of sitting back and thinking, and then spend 20 minutes with young Philippa Georgiou and it just kind of going through her whole backstory. That could be the entire movie, is just where she came from.
And the thing is, how awesome would it have been to see? Because when I see, okay, I know we're not writing it yet, rewriting it, but I feel like there's a world in which we show how she used to run. Do that what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Show how she used to run her imperial security. Show how the rules she made up, what she wanted them to do, the stuff she had them doing, and then have her be the one who and have them all be the same things that Section 31 actually ends up doing, and let her be the one who through this bad influences who they eventually become, because that's how she used to do things in her universe. Now at least that is interesting. Now you've got a reason for her to be there other than just it's Michelle Yeoh and she's an Oscar winner. You know what I'm saying? Now I feel like, oh, okay, we're going Section 31 learn their moves from her bad behavior nonsense. Well, oh my God, I love this. Phoenix Gundam, totally right. Why Mirror Hunger Games?
Oh, the Mirror Hunger Games was one of the dumbest things. I think because they
I got you, Yuckster. I got you.
Yeah, they couldn't come up with something. How did she become? And this is okay. Talk about a layup, right, in basketball terms, right?
Yeah.
And so the easiest layup you've got is how she becomes emperor, because it's half written already. And so this is, I'm sorry, I got to say it, even though it's part of my rewrite stuff, but I'll
go for it.
So you have the opening sequence. It takes place in the Terran Empire.
Okay.
And then we see this grand dining hall, okay? And and so these people are sitting at the grand dining hall, and then and the cameras kind of, you don't really see their faces, you just see that there's some obviously very well-to-dos eating. And no, you know what? I am not endorsing that poster.
Okay, thank you, Ben One Eye. That's exactly what I said to him. I said that when he and I are talking at 3 a.m, whatever, now it's 4 a.m. when I finally watched this. I said the same thing. I said I thought everybody became the next thing up by killing the person in front of them.
All right, so let me finish.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go on. So go on, continue.
All right, so we got the so obviously formal dining hall, people eating, and then the camera slowly pans up, and we see with just a hint of old age makeup, Hoshi at the head of the table.
Yes.
And Hoshi looks down to the opposite end of the table and says, you've done well, granddaughter. And then it pans to the other side, young Philippa. And young Philippa says, thank you, grandmother. I prepared.
And what's her face is alive.
Yes,
she's totally
exactly.
available.
Yes, and so
ain't doing nothing.
She says something to the effect of, "Thank you, grandmother. I prepared it especially for this day." And then people start dying.
That would be so dope.
She kills Hoshi Sato and rises
to become the new and then she's a young emperor, and she's been that way for. That's way better. That's a way better opening, and now we're pulled into something.
Right, and so now, and so then we have San come out. He was the chef, right? Instead of the fellow Hunger Games participant.
Yeah, totally.
And she basically tells him that he did well, and he says, "Thank you, my emperor." And she goes, "But of course, no one can know about this," and then kills him, straight up dead. He does not come back later. He is dead. and so that is how she takes power. And so we are in my version, she is the villain.
My issue I had with the backstory that they wanted to give her, ignoring the actual politics of how the mirror universe is supposed to work. That's not even what I'm talking about. I hated the fact that they wanted to try to. You don't get a human family behaving the way they behaved. A human family has been raised in this tyrannical empire like Nazis.
Right.
They would have been proud
And they're
of
all
her.
true believers.
100%. None of them would have been this. I feel like what we saw was, I'm like, wait a minute. In our universe, maybe somebody would be tore up about this decision. But if you're raised in a society where it's fight or be, where it's kill or be killed, survival of the fittest, then this is just normal. In which case, she should have been proud and honored and the whole bit. None of that was the case.
Right. So yeah, the when you set it up that way, because if you're gonna say, Philippa is straight up evil and beyond redemption, that's fine, but let's lean into that. Because the way they did it, it's like, well, she seems like she's beyond redemption except for when she's not.
Yeah, and they don't even tell you like what it is. So she does the good stuff she does because it's novel? Like what? Like I've never done something like this before. Like what's the point? Like seriously.
Right. So, Michelle Yeoh is 16 years older than Linda Park. Okay, but that's not the point. I'm talking in.
No, it would have been young.
It
It would have been the
Philippa
young
Georgiou.
Yeah, the young one from the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So-
Star Trek Hunger Games in this
So
one.
that opening sequence takes place some 40 years prior to the bulk of our series
Yeah.
or movie. Now, then, and then depending on where I go from there would depend on if we're doing a series or a movie.
I feel like you just do a series of movies. If they're smart, they could have easily turned this into it. Maybe you do a Section 31 series. I mean, I don't know. I think part of the problem is they're trying to, all the series that are in production at the moment are the ones that they're going to be getting like for now until Paramount figures out what they're doing. Like they're not putting any more money into new stuff. Hence why we haven't gotten any words about, Star Trek Legacy or any of the other things people have been wanting to ask if it's happening. They're just like, we got to sort out our own house first.
Well, I think, and this is where I will say some of the hypercritics, I think, are correct in that, assuming that the information is accurate, that Bad Robots or Secret Hideout's contract is running up at the end of next year, then it could be that Skydance is waiting out the clock, basically. And so they want to see if Bad Robot, is it Bad Robot or it's Bad Robot, right? I get it.
What's his name? J.J. Abrams company?
Yeah. So they want to see if Secret Hideout, Bad Robot, if they're going to produce anything good for them before they greenlight anything else under them, because they don't.
Stan. I know Stan's like, but they already are hip deep in filming Starfleet Academy. I know everything that's currently on the table.
But that was greenlit before the buyout.
Exactly. So everything that's already in motion is staying in motion.
Right.
But they're not. They've made zero. Pretty much once we get all the Trek that's currently on the docket, until they figure something out, we're done. And I kind of wouldn't mind a brief break at this point, because last thing I want them to do is burn it out like Star Wars.
Right.
I feel like
what
Star
we have
Wars
on the docket right now is 2 seasons of Academy and 2 more seasons of Strange New Worlds. That's what we actually have on the docket. Anything else is kind of in limbo.
Yeah, I agree. Youngster says it should make her more like a Hitler type of dictator.
Well, exactly. She is. Well, keep in mind that's what she was, and one of my big problems with trying to make Georgiou into a heroic character is, imagine if Mr. Mustache Man was the main character of this show, and you're seriously trying to make him the hero of the show. The only reason that we're willing to accept it is because it's an elegant, attractive Asian lady, not an angry German man.
Agreed. Well, and the thing is, at the same time, I don't like my other issues with like for the fact that they make the one character an augment. I felt this so lazy. How often are we going to keep going back to that trope? Look, I'm a Laan, fine. You want to add people to Nunt Khan's family line, fine. My issue though is, dude, can we go to anything else? Anything else? What happened to the original Star Trek where we had like androids made by aliens and we had and consciousnesses and all sorts of stuff, and even next gen where we had advanced species that weren't us, like those rock people or different
Right.
things. I mean, where's all that creativity? It's just gone. And what do? Far away from Federation space, so none of this will affect anything. What the hell, man?
So and we talked about this is something that you and I have talked about before. Is why didn't if you're going to have a character out of time, why not make it Mr. Mech guy, as Stan Lee calls him, except make him a 22nd century military guy?
Yeah.
That remember we saw them in Encounter at Farpoint, and the ones that the government controlled through drugs. And you just say, yeah, well, they had, they were like mech suits, but that's what they could do in TNG to make a mech suit,
Yeah.
and so, but then I got the idea of keeping the augment part of Alok. Had to look at my cheat sheet because I don't care about any of these characters.
Not in the
Um,
least.
so, uh, so Alok, I would keep the augment, but I'll explain why in a second. As far as Fuzz, the Vulcan.
Yeah.
All right, so I while I'm not a fan of the ridiculously microscopic life form living inside of him,
Right.
I'm kind of okay with the idea that, let's say that he is a malfunctioning lost android, and he could be from one of the from say uh, the planet that Dr. Roger Corby was on.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking
Right. So and so those androids were, could totally pass as human or whatever race, but they also had a very difficult time dealing with emotion. And so he kind of fritzes out. So instead of putting a little microscopic dude inside him, you just make him an android, which
Sure.
I think would make sense. And then and the Kamaloid, fine, he's a Kamaloid, but at
He
least
doesn't do anything,
right, have him do something.
and he wasn't nearly as good or even remotely sexy or attractive as Iman. And she sort of set the template. I,
Right.
I would have I'm sorry. That's the kind of thing where you're like, well, can we bring in what's his face, Childish Gambino, but his real name. Can you bring him in to play that character? The guy they picked was such an awkward
Yeah.
comedic actor. Why pick a comedic actor to play this role? It doesn't make any sense.
And why? And by the way, why bring in the Delton just as cannon fodder? That was stupid too.
I hated the Vulcans. Couldn't stand to hear him laugh, and his personality made me want to stop the movie.
Yeah. Oh, the minute he. Yeah.
I love it. Oh my god! How about, would it be a good idea if we're a cops style Star Trek show, make it about Starfleet security? Oh, dude, a Starfleet security show would be amazing.
But
And
that.
you make it a straight up procedural within the Star Trek universe. Use procedural rules. That would be amazing. And it's literally about them being sent to investigate missions, all like stuff all the time. Hey,
Right.
there's an officer, blah blah, who's claiming this at this one place. You guys got to go, and you get them to check it out. And you could almost go a bit like Lower Decks did a little bit, where it's sometimes a little tongue in cheek, like where they're dealing with the same kinds of things that have happened, in other ships, because those things. I don't know, man. I feel like thank you, Clarence Brown, Donald Glover is what who I was talking about. But still, I mean, like that would be a cool idea. But go on. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. But yeah, so, and then yeah, Mel. First, what is with Discovery writers wanting to give women man names? I don't. I whatever.
I don't know. Ask half the writers in the room who probably have one name like Sade or
Yeah.
like Cher, and it's the it's like come on, like whatever.
But yeah, the Mel. And by the way, here, for anybody who's actually looking to really nitpick, when we first see Mel in the bar, she's blowing bubble gum in front of the Kamaloid.
That's what it does.
Then we flash
Hold
back.
on, a heart shaped bubble gum.
No, it is round. But
That's
then
because it was first coming out.
no, it was round.
I'm telling you.
And then Georgiou says, "Oh yeah, a Delton," and then they show her again blowing it, and it's a heart.
I don't see the problem. What's going on?
I'm just saying, if you really want to nitpick. All right.
No, for real.
right.
Even a Star Trek crossover for Section 31, a Star Wars and Star Trek crossover for Section 31 is better than somebody went to Star Wars universe, stole the third Death Star of the New Republic. Creep wants a Quark Cheers hybrid series with Morn and Ilk as regulars. No
All right,
kidding.
so you ready to have your mind completely blown on how to fix
Lord, here we go.
what?
No, go ahead. I'm waiting for you.
Yeah, so how to fix the show in one fell swoop. And this is just a premise thing, but the story I think will naturally flow from it. So Section 31 is not there to catch the buyer, so to speak, with the Doomsday Machine. They're there to take down Georgiou because they think she has the Doomsday weapon. And so they're there to assassinate her, to straight up, which is more of a Section 31-ish kind of thing to do.
Of course. That's the thing. It was Section 31. You never Section.
Yeah,
they never Section 31.
Right. Yeah, they're just kind of they're space police. But then, you ready for the big catch?
Okay.
They are Section 31 from the Mirror Universe.
What?
A mirrored augment would be a person who radically wants people to have individual rights and liberty and stuff like that, as opposed to a time. Remember, everybody in the Mirror Universe is basically the opposite. And then you have a mirror soldier from the 22nd century who's trying to, escape the oppression that he went through in his time. And then you, as far as a Kamaloid and a Delton, they're not human.
You just told a way more interesting story.
Right.
That's the problem. By the way, everyone in the comments loves this idea. It's like, I love it. I love this idea. Let's get this. This has traction in that I would totally agree. I'm agreeing with you, especially if you can manage to keep that secret for at least 3 episodes, but let little things, almost like Lorca, little things don't add up.
Right.
And eventually it comes out and you're like, oh my God, it makes so much sense now.
Right. So,
and they could be trying to get the device from, because they know she didn't actually destroy it.
Yeah, they know she's got it, and she plans on taking the Empire back. Now, here's the other part of it. I would do the Lost Era time space, but here's why.
Okay.
Who's a character, an established character that you could have be the proper age and be the leader of Mirror Section 31.
Oh, what's going on?
And you already got the actor.
Yeah.
The actor's name is Ethan Peck.
Oh, with a goatee.
So Ethan Peck, Mirror Spock, is the founder of the Mirror Universe Section 31.
Oh my God. Okay, Daniel Stevens says, "Stop making things good. You ruin it." That is an amazing idea, by the way. That is an amazing idea.
Can I just drop the microphone now? I just made Section 31 a good show.
By the way, this is how easy it would be if these people got their heads out of their butts and realized that I'm not even talking fan service. Just know anything about your franchise and your IP.
Right.
What? Again, I asked the same questions I've asked when Star Wars was bought by Disney and everything else. Why buy something with a built-in audience only to change it? It does not make sense. Clarence Brown says, I would like Prime Lorca somehow being the leader of Mirror Section 31. That would be so dope. And then Ahmad Kid says, how can you come up with something better than these overpaid writers?
Because honestly, and it's not because I'm a fan of Star Trek, it's because I just thought about how could you make this work within the Star Trek concept?
Right. And but this just felt like it was running from Star Trek all entirely. I don't care what era they say it is, we never once saw a Federation ship, which I'm sorry, we should be seeing them all the time. We didn't see a Federation ship. You didn't see them pass anybody in a uniform ever. Even there would just be someone around at some point. Nothing. Yeah, man, it's terrible.
Yeah, and the thing is so obviously San would be replaced with Georgiou, and the death fake out would be the bar fight where the phaser to the chest would actually be, and this is something that's been done in Star Trek before,
Sure.
where Georgiou would arrange to have someone shoot her, but they actually activate a transporter beam to get her out of there in order to escape Section 31. Now, she thinks, of course, that it's, Prime Section 31 as opposed to Mirror Section 31. However, her escape ship is the ISS Excelsior, which I already talked about that with you. So basically, an Excelsior class starship with the ISS logo on it, so that we can actually have a Federation starship in it.
Ahmad Khan says, tinfoil hat, is Kurtzman deliberately trying to run Trek into the ground?
I don't think he is, but I think that, okay, so first of all,
I think he, like many in Hollywood, believes he knows better than everybody who enjoys the thing they enjoy. Right. And that, believe it or not, that is not a reductive statement. That's just, I believe that he believes somehow, I want to make, because I heard it in an interview several times this last week. How do you make something cool? They want to make Star Trek cool, not realizing Star Trek already was cool. It was what it was, and that's what made it something we all loved. So to change it to something else, either to get another audience or whatever else, it's the same thing that Star Wars has learned. That other audience ain't coming.
Right. And
those of us who are here are.
That's the beauty, and that's why you can keep it a secret for so long, is that Georgiou has no idea there is a Section 31 in the Mirror Universe. And the reason she doesn't know is because Spock doesn't come to power until Mirror Mirror, which is over a decade after Georgiou crosses over.
Phoenix Gundam is a good thought. I think it still should be Prime 31, as they would be confronting someone who would go further than they would to meet their goals, testing their own belief that the ends justify the means. Here's the thing, but we've already established within Star Trek, Section 31 is the ones who are willing to go further.
And they were willing to commit absolute total genocide. Section 31 has no ethos. And so to try and say, well, what if there's someone even worse? Well, then, what are we going to start comparing, Hitler to Pol Pot, and say,
Taj Raheen said,
Hitler's really the hero because Pol Pot killed more people.
Taj Raheen says, whatever they do next should completely omit any Section 31 stuff, in my opinion. You don't need to. This, because of how they set it up, because of what they did, this has no bearing on anything canonical. Not at all. It's outside of Federation space. It involves people who don't technically exist. Nothing has, in any way, shape, or form, this hasn't broken anything other than just being bad. And other than our hearts, right. That's what it broke. Jeez.
And Yaxter, I'm sorry, no, Koloth could not be a Starfleet captain in the Mirror Universe because the Mirror Universe is, Homo sapiens only, baby.
Creep, I think understands that Kirschman believes he shows that he knows better than we do.
Right.
I don't know, man. It's
And in
terrible.
fact, now here's where, and if you really want to throw Rachel Garrett into the mix, you have Rachel Garrett be the prime Rachel Garrett. And she's like a liaison between Starfleet and the Mirror Section 31.
Oh, very Fringe-like.
Yeah.
Remember Fringe? How
Yeah.
once they got past the big mystery of the other universe, the other parallel
Right.
universe,
So Rachel
they
Garrett is
began
like
working with that other Fringe unit.
she's one of the very few people that actually knows about the other Section 31. But obviously, she's not going to spill the beans.
Clarence, don't hurt him. Clarence coming in swinging, saying if they Kurtzman really cared, they would not have released the movie in this state. Feels like both time and money ran out. It felt like a Sony Spider-Verse type release.
Well, I would.
Damn.
I think that what they did was, I mean, because look, phoning it in doesn't even begin to describe Michelle Yeoh's performance because she,
Right.
and so I don't. It didn't feel like anybody that was on set really cared about what they were doing. They were just there for the payday.
Deadman said had an interesting thought. He says, my thought was have Mirror Universe Spock sending refugees to our universe through the rift. Section 31 is trying to close the rift, then have Starfleet trying to stop Section 31. Huh.
What, trying to turn it into an immigration thing? I mean, you could do that, but I don't think that because honestly, I would have to side with Section 31 on that because it's one thing if people are trying to flee oppression from another country. It's another thing if they're fleeing an entire universe. I don't think that there's any. I mean, how would how many refugees could Spock possibly get out? Even in an entire Vulcan lifetime, he might, what, 1 million? Maybe?
Yeah.
If he was constantly flying a starship back and forth, so, and that's not even the population of one planet. That's not the population of one country on one planet. So I think that, while granted, Star Trek and Star Wars aren't exactly known for accuracy when it comes to scale, it would still be, and I think that it would be a little ham-fisted to especially, now granted, we're also looking at it with hindsight technically because the election
Yeah.
hasn't been decided yet, but
Agreed.
to have on, at a time when Trump was running so hard on immigration, to make it about immigration is to basically have the show take a direct stance on current politics in a way that I think crosses the line. Granted, I'm not saying Star Trek never touches on political issues, but they try to stay, particularly in TOS, because you got stuff like the Vietnam War going on, and there was actually surprisingly little direct Vietnam analogy stuff going on. There was private little war.
Stanley points out, Red Letter Media pointed out how desperately they tried to add more excitement with the edit. All that digital snap zooms and the nauseating camera rotation shots they used way too often.
Oh, the hyperactive camera was just stupid.
Thank you, Darren, for being all about my hairy shoulders. Thank you, sir.
I think the hyperactive camera, honestly, a lot of it was to hide the fact that Michelle Yeoh is 62 years old and can't move like she did, 20 years ago. Don't get me wrong, with a good high budget, and this is the thing, like if you bring her into a serious blockbuster, you bring in the best choreographers, stunt people, and visual effects people, you could make it look like she's fighting. But I don't think that, but they spent $12 million just on her.
I'm going to come back to Moonjumper, but I want to hear real quick. Ben One Eye says, how do they get between Mirror Universe and Prime Universe, though? They don't seem to have a clear setup method across the whole franchise. They actually do.
No, they use the same thing they used in the original series.
And they figured out later on how to replicate that thing, right, that energy, whatever, that just happened to let them slip from one universe to the other. Right. Moonjumper says, Garrett ultimately ends up with random shrapnel in her forehead, not because computer consoles should explode in people's faces, but because she knew too much.
That is true. No,
I'm
and
going
in
with that.
fact, as far as explaining, like how is it that the mirror universe people were crossing over? Keep in mind that it's in Discovery World, they're like everything is top secret, hush hush, we don't talk about it. But in the mirror universe world, they're like, yeah, did you know there's another universe?
Sure.
Let's invade. You know.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Deep Space. Bill Kearns says, Deep Space Nine is calling here about current issues. Trek has a definite history. I see the problem as being more about quality than touching on issues, doing issues, but with a low quality script. Well, yeah,
Well,
I'll go
and
with
what I'm
that.
saying is like you have to make it ambiguous enough to where, because the problem is if you're too on the nose with your political writing, then you are going to alienate half your audience.
Great. He says here, the dead man said, I just wanted to show Section 31 doing what they think is right, but they are wrong. He says, but they are wrong. Really showcase the good in Starfleet. I wasn't thinking of the political. I'm tired of the world-ending events. You know what? I'm with you. I
Yeah.
get that everybody thinks that's what makes a story, but at the same time, I really don't think that they shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, I love the fact that Georgiou's got a soccer ball sized device that can blow up a quadrant.
Here it is. Hold on. Here's the one you've been waiting for. It says, saying about social issues, how is there still a Chiron or Chiron still alive? I thought the moral of the
Sharon.
story is Chiron. A story is blind racism can destroy civilizations.
Okay, so first of all, let me correct you on part of that, Phoenix, because and this is one of my things that it's just one of my pet peeves. That episode is not about the destructive power of racism. That episode is about the destructive power of hatred. And there is a difference because Lokai and Beale were both equally wrong. And so it's not just, oh well, obviously they hated each other because of their race, but it was the fact that they had conflicting ideologies and they couldn't see to sit down and talk because they hated each other so much. And in fact, I love the way it ends when they say all they have is their hate, and Uhura said, "Do you suppose that's all they ever had?" And Kirk gives the great line, "No, but that's all they have left." And unfortunately, when we just give in to hating our enemies instead of trying to reach out and have a civil discourse, Sharon is what would happen. However, and I do, and it's I can't remember if it's part 2 or part 3 of my review. I actually drive it home by showing, like, Spock says no less than like 4 times that every single Sharonian is dead.
But
And
remember, that takes place after this
right.
in
Well,
time. So,
well,
so
it
technically,
depends on who you believe as far as dates.
also, this is far out. This might have been the
Mhm.
one Sharonian who ended up taking a hike somewhere else and whatever. Real quick, Darren said I would have preferred a show about Starfleet spooks. That's what they called them in the Navy, intelligence operatives, with Section 31 as the faceless big bad villain. You know what? I would have almost, ooh,
Well,
you're in, I don't know why Bad Robot didn't just copy themselves. Make Section 31, even with Garrett, forget Michelle Yeoh, though I understand why you have her. Make Alias. Make Section 31 Alias. Garrett, and you figure out the time framing, is pulled into Section 31, and she from within starts finding out more and more about how dirty they are, and she begins working with real Starfleet intelligence against this whole organization. And again, you make it like Alias, how Sydney Bristow for the first 2 seasons was working for an agency she thought was the CIA, only to find out she was in fact not working for the CIA. She's working for the bad guys. You know what I'm saying? I feel like there's a world in which you do that kind of a mix, and you make this a really, really interesting commentary. And now Garrett's more than just a centerpiece for cliche, bad written Starfleet dialogue. No, you shouldn't do stuff. We don't kill people. It's like, what do you want? Stop it.
well, and I would say, like what Darren's talking about would be better than what we got for sure.
Absolutely.
But then you wouldn't call it Section 31.
No, but you still do because she's with them. But she just doesn't know who them is fully. And then she starts to unravel that. Now she's like, well, how do I go to start there? They are Starfleet intelligence. They're there, and the whole thing. There's a whole world in which you have her go finally build up the courage to say, I don't care what's going to happen. I'm going to go to Starfleet intelligence. And she goes to Starfleet intelligence. Her handler is the head of Starfleet intelligence. And she's like, oh my God, like the person she's Section 31. Now you have her as this, I have to try to bring down Section 31. Now that's the story we're telling. And I'm not saying because eventually they're going to go down. She obviously will fail or something will happen. But I think that would have been a more interesting direction to go in.
Well, I think the one thing we can all agree on, Section 31 sucked.
It's so bad. No, legit. Again, and I think what we've proven is that there's more than half a dozen different potential possibilities of ways you could have gone with this that they didn't go. That would have been interesting.
And that's why I said, and I don't, I like Michelle Yeoh, but at the same time, she's at the center of a lot of the problems here, is because the only reason this got made was because they had her. And, honestly, if she hadn't won that Academy Award, Section 31 would have just faded into obscurity. And unfortunately, since she won the Academy Award, they're like, we got the contract, let's make this. And it was
make it more like classic Trek. Or don't forget, the leader of Section 31 at one point was also named Sloan. Yeah, you could have done an entire series called Sloan. And it's like the original Sloan before they take on, because again, my whole thing is show us how they got to those characters we saw. How did they end up there? The problem is these writers aren't even remotely caring about connecting those dots for us. And those dots being connected would have been the most satisfying things for existing fans, whether you like Section 31 as a concept or not. It just would have been satisfying. Especially because you've got Enterprise and Deep Space Nine on opposite sides of the spectrum. Just connect those dots, man.
Right. Well, and I think, the funny thing is, this is the first Section 31 story where Section 31 wasn't the villain.
It's true. Kaz Dragon pointed out, similar to what you had said, Michelle Yeoh and the girl who play the younger version of her were great.
Well, I agree with half of that statement.
Yeah, well, within the context of what they were given, I think they did as good a job as they could do.
I don't. I genuinely think that Michelle Yeoh phoned it in, because I've seen her deliver way better performances than what she did in this. This is just her, and my understanding is her schedule, there was a lot of conflict there, so she wasn't on set as much as they would have liked, and so I think
which is why you get so much of everybody else. Like the star is barely in her thing.
Yeah. And Stanley, yes, that line, in fact, I just recorded a little thing about that. I said that line is delivered like it was a 10-year-old girl who got to say a naughty word in front of her parents. That's what
Robert Rose Jr. says it right. Plain and simple, Star Trek just needs to become Star Trek again. And I have to agree.
Yeah, I agree with you, Robert, but I also think that it's there in the form of things like Strange New Worlds. And I would say, I know some people like to poo-poo on Strange New Worlds because it's still not exactly the same as classic Trek, but TNG was nothing like TOS.
And everybody hated it. I have the newspaper clipping.
They changed everything. And so I would dare say that Strange New Worlds is more like classic Trek than TNG was in its day.
But TNG at least knew, we have to do a newer version of a ship that's that has the same sort of setup. We're going to modify and update some of those elements. Like they took, at least they lived within the universe, that though we may have been shocked by the newness of some things, felt like Star Trek. This did nothing like that.
Oh, no. The Section 31, if you could edit out probably less than a minute or two of dialogue, and somebody could watch the entire movie and not know it's Star Trek.
Yuckster says, I used ChatGPT to create a Star Trek Discovery episode about Section 31 and the hypothetical what if Rick Berman in 2017 was still the showrunner of Star Trek. It's a very interesting concept. Mm-hmm. Hey, Yuckster, everybody loves the number one, a know-it-all at gmail.com. everyone loves a know-it-all at gmail.com. I want to read that. I want to read that because I think it'd be hilarious, and I would think it'd just be super, super so funny.
Now, what's interesting, yeah, Bill, you're right. The difficulty in defining what Star Trek is fans would be divided on that. Well, okay,
Sure.
look, you're never going to please 100% of the crowd, but you know what's better than, or do you know what's worse than dividing the fans? Uniting the fans that it sucks.
Yeah, I mean, this. I think all of us were like, you know what, new Trek, old Trek, whatever. We all hate this.
Yeah,
This, whatever this is, it
yeah,
doesn't do anything for any of us.
I have yet to see even like the most shilliest shill channel that I have the tolerance to occasionally watch, which is Trek Culture.
I knew you were going to say that. I hate you.
And
I love Trek culture, but go on.
yeah, but I mean, let's be real. They are extremely, they're to get them to say a serious critique of Trek is difficult. And even though they were much softer on Section 31 than any other review that I've seen, even they said there's not much to like here.
Yeah.
And so that's rough. So when the people that you can, if you're the producers of Trek, the people you can 100% count on are like, I watched it, that's tough, and
Oh my
as
God,
far as
really?
what scenes were
Hold on. Don't skip. At least Deadman says at least they didn't talk
Oh.
like teenagers. That's true. I will say that. I was waiting for that because we've gotten that with Willow, we've gotten that with Star Wars, we've gotten that with a lot of other things. And I at the very least, they tried to have dialogue. It was bad, but at least it wasn't. They didn't go full teenager talk, even though you have stuff like the "get your crap together" lines.
right. Well, and so as far as scenes hitting the cutting room, no, episodes hit the cutting room floor. This was a series that they trimmed down to an hour and a half.
Yeah, it was. They had already written episodes for. I think they were close to having 2 seasons written.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ben One Eye says mission log. I don't know mission log, so I can't say.
Mission log I like. I like mission log. I also I've watched. Yeah, Trek yards are cool. Whatever. I mean, I kind of watch everybody. I do. I really do. I stick my head out there just to see what everyone's talking about once in a while.
Look, and I know a lot of people. Look, Captain Foley over Trek Yard. He's a friend of mine, but and I would say this: do they try to see the good in all Trek? They do. However, watch their most recent videos. They are struggling to come up with
Yeah.
they literally had to do the wall of weapons on Georgiou's in Georgiou's office just so that they could say there was something about Section 31 that they thought was okay.
Yeah, Darren says, I do think Section 31 is the perfect curtain call to the work of Alex Kurtzman. I agree. I'm hoping. My thing is, I've been hearing from the rumor mill that that Skydance may not be all that much better in the long run. So I don't know what to believe or not from all that. So I'm sort of keeping my ears to the ground to see what comes from all of that.
Well, I say the proof is in the
yeah.
pudding. Once when we start seeing Skydance produced shows, then
True.
then we'll see if there's going to be a difference. Now, I would like to see Strange New Worlds continue because I would like to see it morph into a straight up reboot of the original series.
Same. That's exactly where I stand on it too.
And so, and I think that there's plenty of room there to do a soft reboot of Trek.
Well, and you don't have to tread too much of the same ground.
Right.
It's a 5-year mission. We've only seen 79 instances of what those missions were. There's a whole lot more mission to have, a whole lot more stuff you can do. Not everything has to be earth-shattering or universe-ending. As Strange New Worlds has shown, they can still do an episodic series. And I think that would be better. You're right. I'm with you. And that nothing would bring a new generation of younger Trek fans in better than doing something along those lines.
Right. And I don't even and I know that it's the popular thing to do, but then again, when have I ever been one of the popular kids? I do not crap on Alex Kurtzman, just like I don't crap on Kathleen Kennedy as much, because I don't think, first of all, when Alex Kurtzman goes out and does press junkets, what do you expect him to say? Yeah, this movie sucks, man. It's bad. No. They're of course going to give it some kind of positive spin. And yes, he's out there saying, "Ooh, we want to make Trek cool and edgy and all that." But you know who didn't write Section 31? Alex Kurtzman.
No, for sure.
And so, there were 3 writers, and he ain't one of them. So I think that now, is he ultimately the brand manager for Trek? Yes, and so he does bear some responsibility. But I'm not going to just sit there and say everything Kurtzman touches is crap, because you know what? Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds are both good shows in my opinion. And so honestly, Section 31 is, yeah, it's absolute crap. But as far as series are concerned, it's about a 500 batting average since Discovery. In my view, and some people will give it better than that because a lot of people love Picard season 3. Even though I'm not one of them.
I am one of them. I did love Picard season 3.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I can't have criticisms and see the criticisms of it either way. That's like I said. I see what they could have done with this show, and I also see what I thought was the beginning of it. You already have Skeleton Crew. You can't have Star Trek Goonies. You already got Skeleton
Well, they did Prodigy already.
Prodigy is not Star Trek Goonies, bro. Prodigy is very much not that.
I know it's Prodigy is Star Trek Clone Wars
or Star Trek. Okay, you know what? I'll go with that. I think you might be right. Sure, I could see that. That's a good comparison.
And I'm sorry, Darren, that would be the biggest disaster in
No,
the
it
history.
wouldn't. You shut up.
Absolutely,
I think that would actually,
it would.
No,
because you know what would happen? Star Trek would then become hyper political, just like the Orville did. And
Orville was not
interested.
hyper political. I watched it. It wasn't.
Well, then you weren't paying attention to it.
No more than any other Star Trek we've ever seen before was.
Oh, I will go to the mat on that. You want to watch some Orville? We'll watch some Orville because
I love me the
how
Orville. I
many
watched
episodes of Orville?
Loved it. I watched it. I've watched that series twice. My wife and I have. It's an
Right.
excellent show.
And how many episodes do they talk about how advanced spacefaring races give up religion?
I agree with this, by the way. Section 31 is Star Trek Acolyte. It 100% is.
No,
it's funny. We were all. It is. You're right. But I'm saying this is the closest thing to that we're going to get.
At least Acolyte looks like Star Wars.
Okay, I'll go with that. Yeah. At least Acolyte looked like Star Wars. This didn't even look like Star Trek. Yeah. This looked like, as happens in Hollywood often, someone said, "Here's a movie. Go slap an IP on it." And it's a totally different idea. It's got nothing to do with nothing. And that's what this was. This had nothing to do with it at all.
Right. And so
yeah, Goonies is they're talking about finally making it. Now that Kihi Kwan is with WME, they're talking about he's looking at doing a reboot, or not a reboot, a requel. So
what?
Kihi Kwan's gonna the Asian guy from he was the kid from Short Round. Yeah, he's gonna potentially be he's in talks with some people to do a Goonies sequel thing.
Okay. Well, I think that's an idea. Sure. I don't think it's a particularly good idea, but whatever.
My case says Picard season 3 works on nostalgia and the strength of the cast. The actual storyline is so much woo and nonsense. I don't know what woo and nonsense is, but I will agree with you. The story is actually very weak, and some of the plot lines that they brought up, I didn't like what they said about the characters. That's why I said I'm able to be critical. I loved finally getting to see I loved finally getting to see the show I thought I was going to get with Picard season 1. I thought we were going to get some sort of a victory lap again, and they did that for this, and like whatever.
But yeah, so why did they keep Control when they defeated Control in Discovery? Because apparently 60 years later they forgot about that and just figured, we'll call it Control again.
Acolyte is an interesting idea, poorly written. Section 31 is a poor idea, worse written. Planet X says Lower Decks was written by people who obviously know and love Star Trek, unlike Discovery and unlike Section 31.
Okay, so here's my problem with and I know, Planet X isn't alone in feeling that way. And yes, Mike McMahon is a Trek nerd through and through, and
Any references that you've ever seen of Star Trek and Rick and Morty came from him.
right. But the thing about it is that can only, as far as having a true fanboy writing a series, it can only work in a format like Lower Decks. That's not going to work on a Strange New Worlds level or anything else, because you know what they're not. You know what a fanboy's not going to do? Come up with anything new. They're going to revisit all the greatest hits because they're going to say, "Ooh, and we can do that. Let's bring back the Doomsday Machine, and let's bring back, the First Federation, and let's bring back the Tholian Web, and let's bring back, they're not, and that's why we call it fan fiction." Okay, now that works great. Yeah, that works great in a format like Lower Decks because that's the hook of Lower Decks. However, if you were doing a serious Star Trek series, and basically, I mean,
I love when you say that. You make it sound so hoity-toity. If you're going to do a serious,
when I say serious, I mean a drama as opposed to a comedy.
No,
I don't mean that like I don't say Lower Decks isn't Star Trek. I think it is. I think that some of the stories they tell are very good Star Trek stories. They're just framed in a comedic light.
Sure.
And so if you're going to do it in a serious format, the problem is going back to the planet where Landru was and finding out everybody had gone back to Landru isn't going to land, right? Go and all the other little, going to a guy that has Spock's bones from the animated series, not going to work, right? And
So Darren says, all I want is a production staff who understands why Star Trek works and doesn't hate it. Now, on the heels of that, Bill Kern says, I'm not sure I agree. Trek movies of the past, second and fourth, were by people who loved Trek. Some writers have loved Trek. Okay.
that is not true.
No, hold on. I agree that the people, I'm not talking about the facts. You can argue with that in a second. My thing is that what you're describing, those Star Trek movies that came out, truthfully came out from people who were frankly burned out on it. They were they'd lived in that story for so long. It needed the break it eventually got. Otherwise, we were just going to keep getting the same thing over and over again.
Two names, Nicholas Meyer and Harv Bennett, not Star Trek fans. And they produced the two greatest works in the Star Trek universe. And sorry about the dog.
Ron Moore does love Star Trek.
Yeah. Huh?
Ron Moore does love Star Trek, even though he wanted to make it.
I'd say Ron Moore liked Star Trek The Next Generation, sure, but that's where he cut his teeth, too. Sure. I don't think he's a fan of TOS. I really don't. I think his writing style reflects. He might say he is, but his writing style does not show it.
The Dead Man say that's what I fear Strange New Worlds will do, remake TOS episodes. I don't think it's going to happen, but I hear you.
Right. But you know what? If you think about it, the closest they've come to that is when they revisited the Romulan incursion from Balance of Terror. But even that wasn't a retelling of the same episode.
No, it wasn't. Right. It was right. Strange New Worlds did remake Balance of Terror. Yeah, I heard Star Trek I heard Star Trek Prodigy is actually good. I thought it was excellent. I thought Star Trek Prodigy, it's essentially, the stories we've always seen told from the alien side. Meaning, rather than showing us as Starfleet and Star Trek, you get to see a group of alien kids who suddenly find themselves in a situation and eventually join Starfleet, and it's excellent. I thought it's excellent. Go see it. It's on Netflix.
Well, I mean, they have an actual starship, so I'll give them that much at least. But I didn't care for the cast of characters on Prodigy until Janeway shows up. I struggled to watch that show. And honestly, whenever Janeway wasn't on screen, I struggled to watch that show. I didn't care for watching a bunch of wisecracking kids on zany adventures in their little starship. That to me is not good Trek. But
Because God forbid we show any character learning to discover what Starfleet has known and stands for amidst the horrors
You know,
they've had to deal
you know
with.
why Star
I mean,
Trek?
I get it. I can see why would you like that? I don't understand.
You
I mean, each of us were once a kid who learned to love something about space travel and what the
sure.
future
And you know
holds.
what? I didn't. You know what?
God forbid.
I didn't need Captain Kirk to be 12 years old to want to see him as a hero. I didn't need to have a bunch of kids on a starship to make Star Trek accessible to me. And Star Trek, the animated series, is the perfect example, even though, yes, the animation is crap by today's standards, but it's the perfect example of how you do sci fi for kids. You just do sci fi for kids. You don't have to dumb it down and make little kids running around to make it accessible. I'm sorry. It's Prodigy to me. They
But the
literally in
thing
the
is,
first
maybe
episode are like, "Oh, hit buttons until it goes
hold on.
pew pew."
Prodigy does the thing that we want Section 31 to do. It introduces new elements, introduces new lore,
I'd say
even moves the storyline forward, and does it fully wrapped in the trappings of Star Trek with no doubt or question. Whether or not you
I
like the characters is probably it's the same as me not necessarily liking the first 2 seasons of Enterprise.
I fully
So,
agree that Prodigy is infinitely better than something like Section 31. I totally will agree with you there. I'm just saying that if you compare it to shows like Strange New Worlds and even Lower Decks that feel like these are Federation officers. Are they all, like on Lower Decks, are they the best of the officers? No, they're just average officers.
but even the average ones excelled and saved the universe in the end.
But the I'm not. It just it's like, oh, and I'll even say this: what kid who's a Star Trek fan wouldn't have had the fantasy of finding a starship? Sure, that's awesome. However, to me at least, and granted, I know Prodigy was technically marketed to kids, which also makes no sense because it's the only child appropriate Trek that's come out in the last 30 years, or well, not 30 years, but since 2004. So which is just kind of funny, because Star Trek used to be something that was family friendly. Yes, were there deep issues that they dealt with? Yeah, but did they get all graphic in your face with stuff? Not generally.
Here's the biggest problem I think you have with people in our culture as fans. I
Mhm.
think Bill Kearns did say it well, which is we all have personal vision. But the truth is, if you stop and look at the thing, you have to understand you're meeting it in a time period where you, just because you met Star Trek where you met it, that's a result of the time period. That's a
Right.
result of what was happening and availability. There wasn't like there was a million people churning out sci-fi and churning out Star Trek or anything at the time. So when you suddenly see Star Trek, yes, it looks fantastic. It looks this and that. It may have been telling adult stories because it had to check a bunch of boxes to make it even worthwhile for the network to make it. So then all of a sudden you as a kid get into it because sitting here going, you didn't have to dumb it down, brother. You had no choice. That was the show you got. Whether or not you were either going to like it or you weren't. Just because now we've evolved to a place where we have so much choice and option that you can absolutely make a thing geared toward a specific audience. Skeleton Crew was for kids all day. I also enjoyed it because it reminded me what I enjoyed about the original when I was a kid.
Crew. Well, I would take Skeleton Crew over Prodigy any day. I think it's a better show.
Dork Knight, by the way, I did see your comment before. Dork Knight says Skeleton Crew was better than Prodigy, and that was about the same kids who found a starship.
And that's why I said, Skeleton Crew is Star Wars ripping off Star Trek, ripping off Star Wars, because I think that like the having a lot of aliens and fantastical things and not really worrying so much about how the technology works, that's Star Wars through and through, right?
Sure.
And so when you do that in Star Trek, like they did with Prodigy, every time I look at Rock, I'm sitting there thinking, she looks like she belongs in Star Wars.
Because they're not allowed to have any other species than humanoid ones that have 2 legs, 2 arms, and stand upright like we do.
Star Trek is about the human adventure.
That's what I'm saying. This show was specifically designed, Prodigy, to be different. It was designed to approach the same stories, but from the side of the other. Because notice our main characters learn of the wonders and fantasticalness of the Federation.
Sure.
They didn't have
I'm not
the
saying, and
fantastical
again, I'm not
Federation come
saying
into
it's
their ship.
100%. I'm not saying it's 100% bad, but I'm also saying that I don't need little kids find and so for example, they say, and I don't know if it's true or not, but they say that Prodigy is canonical, right, within Trek, and
Yes.
so if so. You're telling me that the most advanced starship ever created has no security systems on it whatsoever?
What was a prototype?
Yeah, you put security systems on your
No, what I'm
advanced.
saying is it was a prototype. It was intended. They were testing out the engine thing. If the engine hadn't malfunctioned, it was going to come right back, and there was no full blown crew assigned to it. There was like a handful of people that were all
Right.
researchers working on the design. It was now the finished one you eventually get. That's full blown, fully realized, all the things. But up until then, the prototype was just the prototype. It just happened
Right,
to have
but
an accident.
you're telling me that Starfleet, which, especially in TNG era, because this is post TNG era,
Mike, I
uh,
love you.
um,
Prodigy treats Starfleet as an ideal to aspire to.
I agree,
Thank
and
you.
that's a good thing about it.
Absolutely.
That is absolutely a good thing
Absolutely.
about it. But when I say, could you imagine if some rando came onto the bridge of the Enterprise and just told the computer to set a course somewhere, and the computer's like, oh, okay, or would it say you are not authorized?
Moonjammer says Starfleet security tends to suck.
But you see, now you're just, I know it's a joke, but you're making excuses. If this is supposed to be consistent within the Star Trek universe, then there should be some reason that the security protocols are all malfunction. And it's one thing, like, even if they could convince Janeway, the holographic Janeway, that they're really cadets, but then they're going to get access to weapons of mass destruction. They do fire
Someone,
phasers right out
someone's
of the gate.
someone's laughing and enjoying something really loud.
Yeah. I think that's probably my daughter laughing at my nerdy talk.
No, right on, man.
Yeah. So and so again, I just don't see, it doesn't fit right to me. Now, is it horrifically bad like Section 31 or Discovery or Picard? No.
Here's the thing. I feel like your arguments, though, because the thing is, your arguments ultimately boil down to I just don't like it because I don't like it. Like at the end of the day, I
No,
give
my
because
argument is I don't think it fits within the established canon of Trek.
and again, I'm sorry. Who's I need to understand what we're comparing that to. Now, mind you, don't get me wrong. The same flawed people who control that show also controlled the one above us.
Well, yeah, I
So
know.
or this thing. So I get it.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. Oh, I can't believe that they made a starship with no safety. Of course, I can believe that, because if they can make this schlock that we were talking about, then sure. I'm surprised that they don't make a ship where any person, like, it just beams up random
Oh my
people and says, "Hey,
god.
how'd you like to be a captain?"
Stanley says we need daddies versus daughters stream with Baby Know It All and Ebony. That
But
would
yeah.
be amazing.
So well, unless we were talking about Star Trek the original series, I don't think my daughter would care.
No, yeah.
Um, but
The
yeah,
dead man says, "I agree. Kids wouldn't stumble upon a skunkworks plane, but I still like Prodigy."
Well, but to me, and this is, and granted, this is where one of the things that I personally struggle. And again, I'm not saying you're a bad person or you're a dummy if you like the show, right? I would never say that kind of thing. I'm saying, for me personally, as far as trying to enjoy a show like this, I'm definitely, I analyze things to death.
Okay.
That's why I'm willing to make an entire video discussing 30 seconds of an episode.
Creep says ships are built in sections, so the built-in security should have already been built in there. So hang on, Creep. As someone who was in Starfleet International, I was a chief engineer. I know I like to pretend I know a little something about some of this stuff. Here's the thing. If indeed the ship was a prototype and they were testing out the engine, which is ultimately what malfunctioned, causing the problem, the engine being correct would be a major part of the security system. Now, could you have door locks and things like that? Absolutely. And in fact, there's an episode, Prodigy Season 2, where that exact thing happens, meaning that they end up reactivating some of the ship's security measures that had been dormant, that had been put there, but were never instituted. And what happens? It locks down, and it's one of the things that eventually precipitates the creation of Evil Hollow Janeway. Along with,
of course,
because
why,
right.
on your side, that's why there are no security guards on the Excelsior in Star Trek 3.
Right.
Which was a joke.
No, I think it's funny. Yeah.
Because they were
just walk right in. They just yeah, totally.
Yeah. So obviously they had no security on the Excelsior, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Now, and again, so I tend to overanalyze. That's why I'm willing to make I've produced now about an hour's worth of content reviewing Section 31, and I've only gotten to the part where where they take the drugs. That's as far, and that's only like 2 minutes in, so
it's awesome.
Yeah. So
Stanley says we need to see more Starfleet security wearing the football pads.
And that's where, like, if you were to do, and that's where I would say, if you want to do something different, there are different things you can do. We talked about doing a Star Trek JAG show, right? Where
it was so good.
And so you can have
procedural.
You can have a Federation starship that's primary duty is to go wherever legal services are needed in remote colonies and stuff like that. And they try cases. It's like CSI in space, right? And so you could absolutely do it. And then
that'd be really good.
Yeah, and you can absolutely do something like someone suggested earlier about doing a cops style show about the security forces in Starfleet, and actually stop making them look like a joke, right? And
real quick, thank you, Mike. Mike points out a plot point is that the kids found the protostar after it was hacked by the Valnakat. So that's fair. That's fair. But notice they were never able to fully get the thing working.
But then Janeway still. So I mean, again, you have a hologram whose job is to teach Starfleet cadets, and she doesn't recognize. She's a computer program.
True story.
It's so.
Hold on. Truck Reviewer says that is because the captain of the Excelsior traded all of his security for a swagger stick.
That's also true. And honestly, here's the problem: is really
that's awesome.
If Prodigy would have taken place in the Lost Year, we'd have no problem whatsoever because we learned that at the end of the Kirk era, that everything would be installed on Tuesday.
Yeah,
right?
For real.
So if there was an experimental
security wasn't installed until Tuesday.
Yeah. Sorry, just
Clarence pointed out Picard season 1 felt like a crime drama. It kind of did. I think they were going for something similar like that sort of a feel. It just
but it also had a 97-year-old man take an explosion to the face, sending him flying 50 feet back, and then he just wakes up on his couch at home, and they're like,
"That's how we
doctor or anything."
That's how we grow them in Starfleet. What are you talking about? Resilient.
I'm sorry.
Or, Deadman points out, or a Starfleet medical show like MASH. So get a tour of duty set during the Dominion War.
You could do well, and they hinted at what that might be like in Strange New Worlds, where we saw the flashbacks with M'Benga during the Klingon War, and that was brutal.
Yeah, it was rough.
So there are places you can go in the Star Trek universe. Now, I would try to avoid going super duper dark, because that is kind of the antithesis of Trek, is going overly dark, and that's the problem with Section 31.
Well, I think
they couldn't figure out what they wanted to do. I mean, they wanted her to be dark, but then they also wanted to be schlocky.
You do it observationally. You do it so you have a character who is maybe reformed, who had been in jail. Maybe Section 31 put him in jail, threw away the key. Starfleet got him out, and it's like he's rehabilitated, and he doesn't want to go to dark places. He doesn't want to go to that, and ultimately you deal with him struggling. That's how you show that darkness that exists. You don't have to try to do this whole we're going to do this show and blah blah blah. I don't know, it feels weird to me.
And so Bill says about Satan worship, they had an episode of TNG where Picard argued against a person masquerading as a devil. Yes, I remember that. Great episode, goes
Yeah,
along with the
true.
Jag conversation. You know, but if you
Oh,
go
true, it did. It
but
was
if you
all. It was
go
courtroom.
yeah, but if you go to the animated series, they go to the center of the galaxy and literally meet Satan. And not only do they go on trial, they actually do. Kirk and Spock defend Satan and get him off.
That's awesome.
So, bam, mic drop. So,
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
um,
Trek Reviewer says, I still think we should see Dr. Piper before we see Dr. McCoy in Strange New Worlds.
well, that's where, like I said, if they really want to do it smart, I think that they should do a mini series event where they deal with the temporal Cold War once and for all, and they just straight up show that yes, what we have in current Star Trek canon is not the same timeline as it was. And we've already laid down the foundation of that when and tomorrow when Kirk and La'an go back to 21st century Canada, and we find out that it's somewhere around this year, somewhere around 2025, and they meet Khan as like a 10-year-old, which means that the
Yes.
eugenics wars don't happen until at least 2050.
Right. And
And so,
obviously the the in-world reasons compared to the real life reasons.
right.
Yeah. So
And so,
the time has moved on and we haven't had the eugenics war.
and by the way, I'm totally cool with the because and keep in mind in that episode they also set up that the Romulans were a part of these temporal wars, and that Romulan agent said she'd been there since 1996, right? And so they've been trying to prevent Khan from ever coming to power, and unfortunately, she says he keeps coming back because of the genetic project that he was a part of,
Bill
and
Kearns
so
hated the Temporal Cold War and Enterprise. Don't want to see it again. I wish we had more of the Klingon War. They messed up.
well,
So having now started watching season 3 of Enterprise and what they consider the wrap up of that situation, yeah, they sort of just like bailed on that quick.
yeah, they were just like, oh yeah, that's a thing. It's we're done with that.
Phoenix Gundam points out they literally go to the center of the galaxy 3 times and forget they already discovered it every time. I think
Yeah.
that may be what we're going to find out is that's exactly what it is. The center of the universe makes you forget. So you're like, you never remember what you saw there.
Or each time is in a different timeline.
Oh.
A triple timeline, if you will.
For real. I love that so much.
Um,
Mike Case points out, thanks to the Romulan interference in the time stream, the city of the edge of tomorrow is now Toronto. True story. Clarence Brown, fixed points in time. Agreed.
But so yeah, I think that with the Romulan incursion that we saw from tomorrow, combined with what you can do, and my concept was to do it as an Enterprise sequel. So you bring
Sure.
back the cast of Enterprise, but you actually have Daniels, who is the temporal agent that was always in contact with Archer. He keeps bouncing between.
He's Kovac. He's Kovac now, I thought.
Huh?
He's Kovac from Discovery.
Shut up.
Is it?
Anyway, Daniels, because again, this is an Enterprise sequel. Daniels is trying to figure out what's wrong, because something doesn't seem right. And he keeps bouncing between two distinct realities. One reality, the interior sets of the ship look exactly like the 1960s television.
Real quick, Darren, you say what you want about Jesus Christ or Elvis, but don't you talk about the triple timeline. Not here, sir. Not here.
So
the triple timeline is why I'm here. You don't even understand. Trust me. If you knew the whole lore, okay, Dork Knight will tell you. I was fascinated that day. Right. Go on. I'm sorry.
All right, that's okay. So one of the ships, we only see the interior sets. It looks exactly like the original series sets, basically. So it looks like it was made in the 1960s. The captain of this ship, and it is the Enterprise. The captain of the ship is Trip.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And first officer Malcolm Reed. But the timeline he's bouncing between is another timeline where the bridge looks very, very reminiscent of Strange New Worlds. And on this particular Enterprise, the captain of the ship is Mayweather, and instead of Trip, but Malcolm is still the first officer. And so he's trying to figure out what the heck is going on. And then after like the first episode, we realize that the Enterprise that Trip is in command of is the Enterprise ring ship, which we've never canonically seen other than
Right.
in the background on Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
That's right. You pointed that out. That was
Yeah.
yeah. No, you
And so
definitely got that one.
So that's from the Kirk's original timeline.
Sorry, Darren says the triple timeline theory is an idea born out of hate.
Yes. And then the other one, the other Enterprise is the NX refit that that Eagle Moss released.
Right, which I do love. I love that. I love that one
Right.
a lot, actually.
And so he's trying to figure out what the heck is going on, and it turns out that the NX refit is the timeline that will eventually become Strange New Worlds, while the ring ship Enterprise will eventually become Captain Kirk's reality from the original series, the William Shatner version. Now, the nice thing is they can even explain why some people look different.
Yeah, no, true.
Yeah. So the reason that Captain Kirk and there are three different Captain Kirks, right? So you have Chris Pine, William Shatner, and Jim Carrey, because I can't remember the guy's name, but
I love you so much.
the tall, skinny guy from Strange New Worlds. And there's no need for them to say, "Oh, they're all the same person." No, they can say, "Wow, why does Captain Kirk look different in this universe?"
Absolutely.
And it's just because Ethan Peck's Spock could come up with the idea that, well, perhaps because of subtle changes in the timeline, genetic drift may have happened or whatever. So. But yeah.
Right on, man. Oh my God. I tell you what, this spiraled quick.
Yes.
We started talking about Section 31, and it became all the things wrong with
franchise at this point.
At this point, right? I'm like, okay.
and-
let me ask you real serious. Let me real quick ask you another question then.
Yes.
Do you think it would be? Do you think it's almost time for us to take another break?
No.
Like we did. Do you think it's time to kind of say, okay, you know what? Let everybody get their feet on their own.
I don't believe in franchise fatigue. I believe in crap fatigue.
Oh, absolutely, hands down. I do agree with that.
So I think that if Paramount Plus launched a new Star Trek series tomorrow and it was freaking awesome, then people would stop talking about Section 31.
Agreed.
Stanley's
right. He says this just proves Star Trek could be salvaged. Absolutely, it can.
And that's the idea.
Absolutely, can. I think you need the right people behind the steering wheel. You need people who care. You don't even honestly. I don't even think you need people who are canonically super duper detailed. I think you want a lot of that, but I feel like, you know what? Creativity allows for some things to flow, but then do something like we're talking about, like what Salty's talking about. It's what DC Comics did back in the day. They wanted to suddenly justify all the different versions of their characters that had existed, so they created this event. Do what Salty's talking about. Give us a temporal Cold War movie, since we're doing movies, and bring it all together. Do your big MCU style multiverse moment where you see Chris Pine and Shatner and all the character people, somehow shown as a thing, and be like, it's all broken and whatever else, so they have to solve it. And now you walk us through, hey, you know what? It's going to be a little goofy when you deal with the stuff we deal with. Right. That's all. And I'm down, because it's science fiction at its finest.
Yeah. And thank you, Trek Viewer. Yeah, I couldn't remember his name, but yeah, I felt bad. But Paul Wesley. And by the way, I don't think Paul Wesley sucks as Kirk. He's just different, But I actually liked him in Tomorrow. I didn't
real quick, Arvik asked, Michael Burnham is not an Academy, right? Maybe a cameo. I think she might be mentioned. I think we're going to see Tilly, though. Tilly's going to be a regular.
I thought was like one of the main characters.
She's not a main character. She's a regular. So what does that mean? She might be in 2 or 3 of the episodes. In and out. She's not going to be. I don't think she'll be main on the credits.
I remember. Well, it might be because of all the fan reactions when they were saying that she was going to. Because remember, she in Discovery season 4, they were saying she's going to be the head of Starfleet Academy,
rebuilding it, as it were.
Yeah, and that I think would be disastrous to have her be the head of Starfleet Academy, but. Star Trek No Way Home. Yeah, the but yeah, I do think that okay. So future Discovery projects aside, as far as 32nd century stuff, quite frankly, I don't have any expectations of, but I also, at this point, they're not going to, unless they start doing time travel stories, they're not going to be able to affect.
Aravic is asking, is the Doctor, meaning the EMH, is he a regular? No, he's full blown cast. He's actually supposed to be in the show. Like he's full blown. He's not a regular. He is actually part of the cast. So I'm excited to see what they do with him. Especially I don't know which one we're going to get. I think we've talked about that in a previous show. So anyway,
But yeah, I'm not all that excited about Starfleet Academy, nor am I dreading it because they can't really do any more damage on the 36.
the reason why I walk in with a level of trepidation is because there are so many A-list actors, and Star Trek has never been that kind of show.
Right.
By that, because my fear is the show has always been the thing that steered the performances and the actors. I don't need them bringing these massive A-listers who think they know what they want to bring to Star Trek.
Right.
I need more Kirk Douglases, which is Michael Douglas's rather. Michael Douglas have said in an interview once, he's like, "Yeah, I'm an actor. I'll do whatever you pay me to do. I'll say the lines I'm gonna say it with as much conviction as I can." He treats every Marvel movie he's in as Hank Pym, the way he treated other big dramas he was in back in the day. It's like that's just I need actors who are going to do the thing, not try to bring me their interpretation. We've seen through Disney, Star Wars, and other things what happens when your actors start talking crap about, "Oh, I want to bring this thing that's never been seen before." Whoa, time out. Nobody asked you to do all that. Right. Just give me a good performance, man.
Well, and the problem is that even with so-called legacy characters, like if you look at the reason Picard failed as a series is because of Patrick Stewart. Patrick Stewart insisted on having a high level of creative control over Picard, and that's why he said, like, I will not be the captain of a starship. I will not wear a uniform. All this stuff that basically made all the fans disappointed in the show.
Right. Yeah. Stanley said, right, you need character actors, not movie stars. You are absolutely correct, my friend. That is exactly right.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that, like I said, Starfleet Academy, I think the worst thing about Starfleet Academy is the fact that it's going to have the Star Trek brand name on it. And so for people will think that's what Star Trek is, when I'd rather steer them toward shows like Strange New Worlds. Because Strange New Worlds is a lot more like Star Trek than anything else we've gotten in recent years.
Yeah, I agreed.
But anyway, so I guess we're going to wrap it up there just saying that, yeah, I pretty much saved Section 31. You're welcome.
Ben One Eye, you're going to bed, sir. Peace out. That's good. Let's see you guys. Oh, my God. This was fun, man. Yeah. I had a good time. With this. I have one last thing to do work that's going on. I will not be available Saturday, but I will be starting. My schedule clears up from my schedule clears up from then after, and I should be able to go back to the 2 times a week format like we used to do. But for sure, so I will see you guys next Wednesday,
when we will not be talking about Section 31.
It's a true story. Oh my God. Oh, I'm afraid it's gonna linger. God, it's gonna linger like a bad fart. It's just gonna linger, man.